Evening, everybody. Today is June the 16th, 2020. It is now 5:40 p.m. Hope everybody is safe and doing well. I'm sorry, let me adjust my camera here. I just would note for the record that Commissioner Powell is having some difficulty getting into the meeting space, but we figure she can catch on as soon as she's able to do that. But we're ready to get started. And as always, we'll begin with our pledge to the American flag. This is a timely part in America's history to reflect on our willingness or our simple desire not to stand for the pledge. Thankfully, in my opinion, I'm glad we've gotten to the point in the nation where we accept the fact that some people simply find no reason to stand. That's the great thing about this country. That is what we teach our children in our classroom. So we can't be hypocrites about it here at central office or in virtual reality. So for those who choose to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and stand, more power to you. And for those who choose not to, stand on a knee or sit down. That's what's great about this country. So I'll turn my laptop over towards where I think my flag is. There, you can catch a little piece of it there. And we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know if you all saw that, but behind, I'm very blessed and fortunate. I had a artist paint a picture of Frederick Douglass. I don't know if you saw that behind the picture. That's Frederick Douglass behind the flag. Certainly an appropriate person to have close to our flag. And I appreciate the opportunity to show that to you. So, all right, next item on our agenda is a call to order, which we've done that already. Speakers list. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers? I don't think so.
We do not have any speakers, but we did have some written comments that were submitted, distributed, and posted on the web.
Okay. I just want to remind folks, as I know our clerk often does, that folks can submit written comments or arrange to have public comments read. All you have to do is send an email to Board of Education at rcsdk12.org. Of course, you have to leave your name, your affiliation, that's whether you're a student, parent, or community or staff member, your telephone number, and the specific topic upon which you're speaking. As a matter of fact, Madam Clerk, we have a meeting this Thursday, and citizens would be entitled to sign up for that. So I'm sure our clerk and the staff that work with her will anxiously await your calls and collect your information so that you can be heard. Also, by the way, Board of Education wants you to know that you all can catch this broadcast on RCSD's Facebook page. Yes, we have a Facebook page, a YouTube page. I don't know if it's called a page on YouTube, but we have a YouTube presence. And of course, on the district's website, which is www.rcsdk12.org/RCSD-TV. So for those of you that can't come to the meetings, and that's all of you nowadays, we encourage you to catch us on Facebook, YouTube, or on our district website. Next item on our agenda are special meeting topics, and there are none. We do have, when we return back to the board general meeting, we do have some new business. Commissioner Adams is going to introduce a resolution for us, but for now, we are honored to have one of 7 members of the Board of Education that chairs a committee, and that is governance. That committee deals with how we relate to central office, our superintendent. That's why we call it governance. And the chair of that committee, elected by her colleagues, is Commissioner Amy Malloy. Amy Malloy, Commissioner Malloy, the gavel is yours.
Thank you, President. Let's see. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I do have kind of a large air conditioning unit in this room, and so if it gets too noisy, just let me know. All right, well, this is my second governance committee meeting, and so I'm still learning. There have been quite a few changes since our last governance meeting in January, and I gotta say, it has been quite the learning experience 6 months into my term. So I just want to preface all of this by saying I still have so much to absorb in my new role. With that being said, I just wanted to quickly explain to those watching who might be unfamiliar with the function of our board governance. And, you know, Mr. White has already explained to us a lot of this, but our primary function, it deals with our board professional development, our trainings, our professional self-evaluations, the evaluation of our superintendent, and the development of broader board goals, as well as the implementation of our Distinguished Educators Report per a mandated timeline. So I want to assure everyone that I'm going to continue to work with our board staff, who are the real pros or experts behind governance, but I'm going to continue to work with them in my responsibilities. I just wanted to quickly offer a very humble thank you to our board staff, especially Marisol Lopez and Kalia Wade, for not only schooling me on the ins and outs of this committee, but also for helping me to familiarize myself with the many complexities in this regard. So thank you to you both. You've been so helpful. All right, so we have several discussion items on our agenda tonight. And our first item is the board self-evaluation. So this is ideally something we should be doing on a quarterly basis. And we are, unfortunately, with everything that's been happening, running a little bit behind schedule due to these recent events. Our board self-evaluation is going to be due on June 30th. This due date is quickly approaching with the many other district events and commitments that we have, like graduation ceremonies, etc. And I'm just wondering if our board clerk, Ms. Marisol Lopez, is there anything else to add in this regard?
For the board self-evaluation? No, the tool that Kalia can put up on the screen so that you all can see it was adopted, and all we need is for folks to submit it. We'll work with the people at Super Eval to input it, and then we'll start working on what the next quarterly one looks like. Thank you, Kalia.
Excellent. Okay, and you'll send just links out to how those get submitted. This is all new for me, of course.
The link that I sent out for this meeting is fillable, and so all board members have to do is fill it out and send it to me.
Okay, so once again, that's due on the 30th. All right, moving on. Our next item on the agenda has to do with the Distinguished Educators Update. And it is my understanding that our board monitor, Dr. Jallo, will be speaking about this along with Superintendent Myers. So I just wanted to pass the mic over to them for these updates. Am I correct on that, Madam Clerk?
Superintendent Myers Small will begin.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Good evening, everyone. So as you know, the Distinguished Educator Report was prepared by Dr. Aquino, and there were 11 areas that he outlined in the report: teaching and learning, special education, English language learners, organizational structure, accountability, human capital, finance, parent and community engagement, school climate, operations, and then also board governance, which is outside of what we work on as an executive cabinet. So as the superintendent, it's my responsibility to coordinate all of these efforts, and we are to report on a quarterly basis to the State Education Department, which includes the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, Dr. Wilkins, who oversees P12, and then all of the other units, special education, bilingual education, etc. And so, as I shared, we do that on a quarterly basis, and we have the report that I will send home in the Friday letter, which outlines our progress. So on that, it states each of those 10 areas, 10 of the 11 areas that we as a cabinet are responsible for. And then it outlines and says either we've completed, we've made some progress, or not completed at all. And I submit to the Board of Education that we need to change that process because, and then there's a narrative afterwards and it gives some updates. But we really, I think we need to take a look at the completed, some progress, not completed, particularly the some progress. There's a lot of those areas that are completed because it's ambiguous, right? Or it's uncertain. What exactly does some progress mean? Because we don't necessarily always comment on that in the narrative. So I will be working with Dr. Jallo and the executive cabinet to rework that. And I did have, we shared that a couple of weeks ago that we met with the commissioner and Dr. Wilkins to talk about the Distinguished Educator Report and these quarterly reports, among other things. So we're going to update that, but I will share with you what was previously done. That needs to stay intact. But moving forward, we want to rework and reframe that so you all, first and foremost, as commissioners, have better information about the progress, hopefully not lack thereof, but the progress that we're making towards actualizing each of the items under these 10 identified areas. And then we can share with you kind of next steps or where we're headed. I've had an initial conversation with Dr. Jallo about this. This is the work that will guide our work, and we'll spend a lot of time over the summer fortifying this and making sure that it is very clearly articulated. But I just wanted to update you that we will and do continue to work on the items outlined in the Distinguished Educator Report. It's a report that is very well done and has excellent recommendations. The one thing I will submit to the board is I'm concerned is that there are a lot of things that need to be accomplished, and I don't want that to be perceived as an excuse, but there's a lot to do. So I'm also thinking, do we figure out a prioritized list or a timeline, something that further delineates all of the things that we need to do? Because there is a lot on this list. But we will send home the latest version that was completed prior to me. So you have that, and then we'll send that off to the state. We want you to have eyes on it, and then we'll work on completing the next quarter. Dr. Jallo, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
So, two things. Good evening, everyone. The first thing is just to remind you that we're going to begin 3 public hearings. The first one is around the definition and the responsibilities of the state monitor. The second one will be around academics, with the primary purpose being to hear from the public about what they'd like to see their school district endeavor to accomplish in the area of curriculum instruction. The third and final public hearing is information gathering from stakeholders around what the community would like to see in terms of financial responsibility or our fiscal status as a school district. So that's an opportunity for the community to join us and tell us what they would like to see. And some of that information should find its way into what my second point is, and what I'm most concerned about is strategic planning. You've had many iterations of strategic planning. You have many plans from many different departments. It's time for us to set a stake in the ground, so to speak, around what our vision is for the district. What do you want to accomplish? I mean, we can write all the DE reports, and that's more around a compliance issue. But now it is time to shift to what are the actions we really want to take to improve the district, improve outcomes for students and their families. And so that's really where we need to concentrate our efforts, because once we establish that, our academic plan will fall into place, our fiscal plan will fall into place, because we will have a set of goals that we all agree to. Without that, we're all going to be in separate areas trying to accomplish our own work. So my main point of concern is around creating the academic plan and the financial plan, which would be part and parcel of a strategic plan, which is primary in the DE's report. Yes. Oh.
Commissioner Malloy, that satisfies at least right now what we wanted to share. So we turn it back to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jallo, and thank you so much, Dr. Myers-Small. moving, I just want to reassure you that I'll be
Commissioner Malloy,
closely. Can you hear me?
you have a few hands that are raised, Commissioner
Oh.
LeBron and President White.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, so Dr. Myers and Dr. Jallo, you guys were not here during the start of all of this, but I do feel like I should give some input. I agree and support you both in wanting to really modify so that the plan has some, we have the details of how and where we're at and how much more we need to go. When the response from this board was voted on, I did not support it, primarily because I felt like it lacked that type of substance in there. That was one portion of it. The other piece for me was that I did not feel like we spent enough time putting together the response. And some of this is on video in terms of previous board meetings. So I fully support what you both are proposing, and I will say that now. I just would like to ask that we get a response back officially from the state, understanding that they support the plan as well, so that, 6 months from now, they're not trying to say, well, you're not following the plan, even though we made them aware of it. So I just want to make sure that we then have something in writing as a board that supports what you guys are proposing for this board and for this district to move forward. I'm with it. I support it. I don't know where the rest of my colleagues stand, but that's just my little 2 cents on it. I would just like to have evidence that they support it in writing. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. I concur. I think we had President White. You're next.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I want to note that the report, the recommendations, the action, the 84 action steps that you have before you are very substantive. The board worked very diligently. Wasn't always a pretty conversation, but we worked very diligently, collaboratively, and came up with this, as you know, a series of recommendations, which, just to make clear, the departing Commissioner of Education, Commissioner Elia, and I believe the interim commissioner wrote in letters to us, the Board of Education, that she believed that those plans described in that 84 document page action step document that you have in front of you represented, and this is almost a quote, a viable plan to move the district forward. I don't want people to lose sight of that. A lot of good work at central office, including the senior management team there, lots of middle level managers, and certainly the Board of Education. To get to that point, we received a number of rejection letters because they did not feel like the report was substantive enough. It wasn't very specific, didn't have specific timeframes. As anybody can see, and I assume that report is still available on our website, it is a very detailed action plan. Now, having said that, could it stand for improvement? Absolutely. Like any decent document, it must be a living, breathing document. It has to be understood that there are things that we can do to improve it. And we stand ready as a board, as a district and central office to make those requisite improvements. And I understand that's why, in part, why Dr. Jallo is here. But I don't want it to be missed that this was a document that we really worked hard on, got a lot of rejection letters, and ultimately the highest officer for education accepted that plan as a viable substantive plan. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, Dr. Myers-Smalls, is this has happened before where the administration will submit an update to Albany and it does not include the board's work. I thought I heard you say, and I apologize if I'm wrong, you were going to provide an update that included the 10 things that the administration were working on. I just want to be clear, and we've said this on a number of occasions to prior superintendents. That update should include the board's governance sections. We stand ready, capable to provide you a report that shows how we are. Kalia's job description was changed in part by the Board of Education so that she could stay on top of the requirements and commitments that we made. So we ask you, as we have our prior superintendents, that we issue a report that includes everything that we have done from the administration to the board and there's some overlapping there between those two, so that we look to Albany. We look to Albany and we speak to Albany in one voice. This is what the district is doing, the board, the central office, to respond to the action plan. So I would ask that you do that. And then Dr. Jallo, I know you and I have spoken of it. I'm still convinced that the software project management piece that we have called JIRA is a viable way in which we can monitor and manage our commitments under that action plan. Kalia has provided reports to this board. I don't want you to think that this board has not been updated with respect to what we're doing. Kalia is on it, if you will, and she provides regular reports and she updates JIRA. Now, I heard our superintendent say that complete, not complete. I think, Kalia, you will correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've agreed, we have agreed with you that there's something about those descriptors that don't really provide for an adequate description of some of the stuff that's sort of in between. So that also is part of continuous improvement. So we would support the change in the software or whatever that said, because Kalia, you can speak up if you'd like. There is, or Marisol, there is sort of this sort of la-la land kind of category that if you check it, you're really not describing. Kalia, would you mind talking about that? And if I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So the board, President White is correct. The board does very much so keep tabs on the governance and leadership section, which is section number 1 under the action plan. The governance section does have 14 items, and then there are also 2 other items in the finance section in the action plan that the board also tracks as well, which has to do with the district's finances. We do use JIRA. I use JIRA to make sure that we're staying on top of the action items, but there is, because of the fact that JIRA does indicate progress through completion, it doesn't really notch off when you complete a particular task. So it's hard to tell where exactly you are in completion. So I'm going to share on the screen really quickly our governance section. And you'll see that a majority of the things are in the completed or the some progress section, but it's hard to say what this means, because under number 1, there are about 8 different action items under number 1. There might be 12 under number 2. And so while some of those might be completed, it's still grouped in that some progress tab. So I do agree with Dr. Meyer-Small that it would be to our benefit to kind of figure out a way to report that more effectively. Right. Additionally, there are some items that we are working together as we've had transition, and this is the latest update that the board provided to the Commissioner of Education in March. There is some transition between how superintendents have addressed this action plan that we will have to sit down as a team to figure out how to address, because prior to Dr. Meyer-Small coming on, there are things like the multi-year strategic plan that has changed, how those are addressed. And then also with Dr. Jallo coming on and there being a new academic plan and financial plan, we'll have to figure out a way to change how the action items are reported as well. So I hope that helps to explain things a little bit further, but it has to be an ongoing conversation in how we put together this report. And I do hope that we can work together, administration and board, to figure out the best way to present as we are achieving the goals.
Real quickly, Commissioner Malloy, the board has made some maybe questionable decisions, certainly in the eyes of the public. We've made some good decisions, and one of them was to hire Kalia. And then to sort of change her role to work on this. I did want the community that's watching, and certainly Dr. Jallo, to understand that the Board of Education has put considerable work into this effort. And this cannot just be, oh, we're going to have this report collect dust on the shelf. It has not collected dust. We've invested time, money, and some of our best talent, i.e. Kalia Wade, into making sure we do what we say we were going to do. And if we have to improve that or change that, we understand that and we're open to that. Thank you, Kalia.
Sure. Commissioner Malloy, can I just
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was just going to call on you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So President White and the rest of the commissioners, I don't want you to think that I was saying that they're two separate entities. They are one in itself. What all I was saying is that the 10 of the 11 are under my purview with my team, and that the board piece is certainly the Board of Education. So it is, all 11 must go together, and that is in progress. So we just want you to see the 10 of the 11, and then we'll send it as a complete document next week. So just to clarify.
So can I ask a question?
Oh, go ahead.
So you've communicated how you are recording progress towards implementing these actions. Who's recording and monitoring or evaluating the success or lack thereof based on the implementation of these actions? I mean, we can all check off that we did, but is doing said action producing results? Yes.
We have a lot of hands that are coming up. President White, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy, but I do know that Commissioner Powell and Commissioner LeBron, I can wait. I was going to respond to what Dr. Jallo said, but I can certainly wait.
Okay, no problem. I'm not sure who was first, so I'm going to go with Commissioner LeBron, please.
Actually, I'm going to say Commissioner Powell had her hand first. So if she wants to, I just know when I raised my hand, her hand was already raised. So she can go ahead and then I can go after her just because I know her hand was up first.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. I wonder if Kalia can answer this question. Does JIRA allow you, the report you just showed us was just X's in a column. Does it allow you to enter a percentage completed, or only that it is in the in progress category?
So
go ahead.
So so JIRA does provide you with a bar of progress. The only thing is there's no way for it to really quantify percentage completion, if that makes sense, only because you're adding in narrative items. So if, for example, the board wanted to prioritize its focus on student achievement, and part of that is doing this, and this, and we put in a narrative that we dropped in a document in there to show that we've completed one portion of that, it will show movement, but the movement is not comparable to the amount of work that needs to be done. So it's not useful in that way. It's useful in terms of as Dr. Jallo pointed out, in terms of checking off the item, but you can't exactly making sense.
Yeah, I follow you. I just wonder if the individuals that are providing that update, if in their narrative, if they were to, and I know it's subjective, most even the best project management software, the percent completed is subjective. But what if the person who submitted that narrative were to add at the end just a percentage that they perceive that particular task has achieved as of that update? I mean, unless, I would hate for the shortcomings of JIRA to limit our ability to present information accurately.
So in short, yes, and I do input the information mostly through documents that are completed through the board whenever we pass a resolution, whenever trainings are completed, etc. It would be completely arbitrary though, essentially, because the items are not, they're just not quantifiable in that sense. But to answer your question, yes, you could put a percentage after that. The only thing is then they round up into the one major goal. So each goal has many sub goals underneath it. And so if I were then to calculate that sub goal and then try and round it up into the larger goal, you can see where there might be some level of error there.
Thank you, Ms. Wade, and thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, I also wanted to, so one, I agree with Dr. Jallo in terms of like, okay, we completed it, but then how effective is it? Did it make a difference or not, and why, and so forth? I don't think we have that evaluation piece of it. Even midway point, right? We could be starting something and realize halfway through that this is just not going to be effective, especially since this was started in 2018, 2019 under different leadership too. And there are parts of this report that are very much so tied to the previous superintendent and her administration as well. So I would love for you guys to take a look at that too, to see what's still applicable and not applicable, to have that discussion with the state. In terms of the timeline, that was another reason I personally did not support the response from us. I felt that the timelines were not realistic, and to like have 30,000, 30 things due all in June and then another 30 in July for some really big and deep rooted issues just did not feel realistic for me. And so I appreciate that you guys, but Dr. Myers in particular mentioned it when you started talking about a way to systemize it and prioritize it. And I do think that some of that, once you prioritize it, will impact some of the other things in a different way once we get there and we get those things fully going. So I just want to throw that out there. And again, notifying the state that you want to reevaluate some of the timelines and why, and make them more realistic for all of us to be able to work together to accomplish.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Do we have any other questions? Go ahead, President White.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I did want to track back to Dr. Jallo's question about how do we evaluate that, and there may be areas in which we could other tools we could use, but I think it's important to note that, as a matter of fact, we just finished talking about the board self-evaluation. I was trying to, at the last minute, see if I could find elements of that evaluation and what it included, but there's no doubt that I would imagine, because that document was completed within the last year or so, or the draft was, that document does contain or could contain elements that are reflected in the DE action plan. So to your question, how do we know whether this stuff is working out? One of the ways that we could do that is by making sure that board evaluation, which is a mechanized system. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it is done by this company called SuperEval. Mm-hmm. We're using it because we used it effectively with the prior superintendents. So that is one of the ways that we can monitor whether we're being effective. And my guess is if I was able to access it, it would show some of the areas in which we committed ourselves to under the DE action plan. And if it doesn't, we certainly would be well advised to change that board evaluation to make sure it does. Additionally, we have, of course, the superintendent's evaluation. That too should be created or realigned, because it already exists, to make sure that if nothing else changes in that DE action plan, that the performance standards and rating scales that you see there are in alignment with what we're doing with the DE action plan. So the other thing that I'll say, and I know people know this, some of the stuff is hard to quantify, whether for example, we have had numerous retreats and professional development sessions. I think people were aware, last week we had one on Robert's Rules of Orders. I can't even tell you how many professional development and retreat sessions this board has had. I say that because I want people to understand, while we are not perfect, and we know that, we have taken our responsibility to improve very seriously. Now the question is, and this is a question not to necessarily be answered today, is how do you quantify whether you've improved in that area? Well, one of the ways that you might look at it is, do people comply with the Robert's Rules of Order during the course of a meeting? Do people keep with their commitments that are described in the DE action plan? So some of this stuff, and I know you all know all this, but I just for clarity for everybody else listening, we do have the mechanics to evaluate some of this stuff. We could modify those. We could add additional evaluative tools. And some of the stuff, you just got to look on the camera and see whether we're doing what we say we're going to do. You got to look at the resolutions and see if we're doing what we say we're going to do. And even when you look on those resolutions and JIRA reports that we passed this resolution that Kalia put in, there is the remaining question, as you asked, Dr. Jallo, did it make any difference? So, thank you.
President White, thank you. I see another hand, Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I just want to respond to what Dr. Jallo said, just in terms of, I thought that the president and the vice president were meeting about this regularly. Even if something is not quantifiable, following what we're supposed to be doing, you should be able to put a narrative. And I would be expecting a report back that if something wasn't working, then, you know, we would get that and that we would be aligning those things. And so that was supposed to be happening on a regular basis, but I'm not sure where that is at right now. But that was the evaluative tool or process that I thought we were taking, and what was the purpose of it. If that's not happening, you know, there's other commissioners that can also join in and do the work and align that stuff. But that was my understanding.
Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Commissioner Adams, I saw your hand.
Yeah, kind of definitely agree with Dr. Jallo in regards to us having stuff on the table and not doing nothing with it. It's parents, students, and many others in this community have been working on transforming discipline for a long time by way of the code of conduct. I think the board passed it like around in 2016, and there's not a whole lot that we've done with it. Even with the suspensions, there's not a whole lot of data, not honest data that's been brought back to see what the results is. I think that's a major issue with this district, and I think we need to just get a grip on that and get some of the stuff that we got on the shelf, get it off the shelf and put it into play. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak? I don't see any other hands. We're good. Okay. Just moving on. I'm adjusting my screen here. Oops. All right. So if there isn't any other discussion on that matter, next on our agenda is developing our board professional development plan. And there are several subtopics to this. The first professional development subtopic is regarding our board retreats. Board retreats are created based on agreed upon topics, board goals, superintendent goals, district goals. And in the past, it's my understanding that these retreats have included restorative practices or professional guidance by representatives from NISBA or from MISBA. And these retreats help us develop rapport with one another, but even more importantly, they can help us develop the skills to work cohesively to move the district forward or effectively meet those distinguished educator goals of the district. So we are still looking for more retreat topics, and many of these can be community specific. So we are looking for suggestions from board members on topics that you'd be interested in pursuing. We're going to be scheduling several retreats for July and August. And last week, one of our commissioners actually offered up a really fantastic opportunity for better familiarizing ourselves with board budgeting or just the board budget in general through some type of simulation activity. So that's a great example of a community-specific training or retreat for the Finance Committee. Commissioner LeBron brought this up at our finance meeting last week, but I wanted to give her an opportunity to explain what I thought was a really great idea. Commissioner LeBron, can you speak to this?
So I did speak to it at the finance meeting, so I don't know how much more I can share in terms of ERS being the creators of the budget Holdem, which utilizes actual deficits and situations, if you will, that many school districts face. So it is really based and rooted out of real life situations. So thought it was a good training for us to do. When I took over finance, we started doing some community trainings as well, but with COVID, we had to really adapt and change things. But there is a vision to have more community board member co-training and around budgets and understanding our budget in particular. Couple of things though, in regards to the budget, I met with my fellow this week. I have a fellow from the Urban Fellows Program. And one of the things that we're going to start working on, and they may start reaching out to you guys, I'm certainly going to place them in front of different community groups as well, is an equity tool for our budget as well. So I know I've mentioned that I want us to move from projections to actuals, but in that transition, I also would like a tool developed for this school district that focuses on an equity lens with our actual budget. And we're not there yet, but I'm sharing that. I also will say I went to a training today for school board members through my fellowship with someone named AJ Kilborough, I believe is his name, from Great City Schools Council. He just started working there, but he was a former school board member in another state for a number of years. And he was excellent as a trainer, really talked about school board effectiveness and how to be an effective school board. And something very simple and powerful that he shared with us was that the role of a school board is really to educate children. And that is the fundamental role that we should be playing. And I thought he was powerful, but I would like to figure out a way to have him as part of a future board retreat, because there was a lot of information that he shared that also included how our policies, that we should be a reflection of the values of our community as elected officials, and how our policies are really a combination of the community, their values, and what they want to see for their children, and how that's codified through a policy. Just, I'm doing as much training individually through other sectors, but I would like to bring some of these individuals to the school board to share the same message, but also the same understanding. And he has done this before. He was effective in his school board, which is why he went over to Great City School Council, the Council of Great Cities. I don't know if I'm saying their name correctly.
Council of Great City Schools.
Yeah, so he just started working with them to offer training through their, to other school board members. But I did have the privilege today of having a Zoom training with him and other board members from across different states. So I'm still waiting to hear back on whether I can get my fellowship to pay for a facilitator for the budget Holdem. And my hope is that we can get a facilitator for the school board and the administration so we could do this together. And then hopefully as things start to open back up a little bit more in the future, we can do one with the school board, the administration, and our community. Because I think that would be really powerful for our community to be engaged in those type of trainings with us.
Commissioner LeBlanc, thank you so much for bringing those ideas to us. I know I'll be deferring to you to get more information, and I certainly appreciate that. Thank you. I see Commissioner Elliott's hand. Go ahead.
You're muted, Commissioner.
I think whatever retreats that we do, they need to be often because we tend to have these retreats, but I believe because they're so spread out, we fall back into old behavior. So I think we should have one quarterly so that we can build on those, but it's just, the human condition. We tend to, if it's not in our face, we tend to fall back into old habits. And so I would recommend that they be more frequent, meeting quarterly, so that we can build upon each workshop. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Do we have any other comments? I don't see any other hands.
Commissioner Malloy?
Yes, go ahead.
So one of the areas as part of this portion of the agenda was really to encourage other committee chairs to come up with some recommended PD for their committees, like Commissioner LeBron is doing, that we can incorporate into the PD plan that we're finalizing.
Perfect. And I know that we are scheduling several retreats for this summer, or July and August. So if there are any commissioners who have topics, we can certainly get those rolling. I see Commissioner, or let's see here. Oh, Dr. Jallow, go ahead.
I just wanted to make the recommendation that whatever the PD is, that is grounded in Rochester City School District data. So if you use your own data to learn new skills, and it helps to internalize the learning. It's just part of adult learning theory. So I would encourage that if you get an outside contractor to assist in this work, that they know the district and you give them data ahead of time so they can use your data to design the professional development so it meets your needs.
Thank you, Dr. Jallow. Let's see, President White.
Yeah, I apologize. When you're a host, you guys know this, you don't get to raise your hand on the list. So Commissioner Malloy, no worries if you don't see me going like this. I did want to say on the issue of training, just to bring my colleagues up to speed, we have been working diligently, actually, not us, been doing most of the work, on trying to get Dr. Malik Muhammad back in here. It's a sort of a new day. We want to make sure we work in collaboration with Dr. Jallow. So we shared some information with her about our past work with Dr. Malik Muhammad. By the way, for those folks who don't know, Dr. Malik Muhammad is a nationally renowned expert on restorative practices. The board decided many, many months ago to engage in this kind of professional development because we felt we needed to practice what we preach. And one of the things this district has done differently, it's really been as Commissioner Adams has said, it's really been the staff that have done it. But Dr. Turner, who has principally led the way in this for restorative practices amongst our children. So, when we were frankly, and everybody's seen it, having some difficult time, having our relationships be effective, we engaged Dr. Malik Muhammad. And we're looking for part two. To my colleagues who weren't informed, we had to develop a contract with him. Dr. Jallow has looked at that contract, and hopefully shortly, to Vice President Elliott's point, you will be hearing something shortly about the part two of that. But we can talk about that later. But I did want to let you all know that we are working diligently to follow through on that commitment as well. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you so much, President White. And I think if there isn't anything else to discuss on those regards, I would just encourage other commissioners to send me those ideas. I can help work with the board staff to plan. And I think that leads us to our next subtopic on the agenda relating to our board budget goals and the timeline. Am I correct on that, Madam Clerk?
We were going to talk about superintendent evaluation and goals.
Oh, okay.
That was one of our subtopics as well on the agenda in terms of establishing a timeline for Dr. Myers-Small to come in and present to the board.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, here it is. Okay, yes. So it deals with superintendent evaluation goals, and we still need to develop those. I also understand that there are some issues relating to portions of this that we need to discuss in executive session. Am I correct on that, Madam Clerk?
Not this particular session, no, ma'am.
Okay, all right. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna kind of defer to you, Marisol, if you can give us some of the pertinent information regarding the development of these goals.
Those are for Superintendent Myers-Small to develop and bring to the board to present.
Right. So typically, if you don't mind, I can elaborate a little bit if that's okay, Commissioner Malloy?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Sure. So what I've done in the past is I've really used the data to inform my goals. And I think we all know good goals really are centered around the fact that you have about 3 to 5. So what I'll do is I'll identify look at the data, identify the goal, send it to you in draft form. We can have a conversation and then we'll just finalize it. But it really should be aligned with our district goals, our data, the distinguished educator report. I'm doing the work that supports the district overall. So I'm not sure how you've done that previously with superintendents, but that's what I'm accustomed to doing, and that's what guides my work. And if that's satisfactory, I'll get working on them shortly. And I think we just need to finalize when you'd like to see at least an initial draft, and then we need to get it finalized.
And this will be brought up during one of the board retreats, Superintendent.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Myers-Small. I see Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to wave, but I did wave officially down. So I just want to say we did develop goals with our previous superintendent, and that was done as a group. So yeah, he had some ideas, and then the board came with some ideas, and then they were meshed together.
Okay.
So I'm open to that process too, that you come with some ideas. But what I will say is that there were a lot of time spent on the previous superintendent's actual goals. And so I asked if you could also take a look at those, because some of those were also based on some of the things that you just mentioned, the Distinguished Educators Report, some of the data parts of this. And then I would just ask that you and the board as a whole, that we can figure out an actual way of measuring the outcomes of that, because even when I first came in, it was a different superintendent and we were doing an evaluation.
Sure.
We super eval, and it was kind of like either you met the goals or didn't. And at one point we had a board member that created a whole different, it was like effective or not effective, and they created their own in between, and that didn't even exist. It didn't even exist, but they were trying to create like this in-between subcategory to put the goal being met halfway or something. And I personally don't want to see that. I want us to stick with the metrics that we're measuring the goals and their success, and that we stick with it. So I just want to put that out there, because this is lived experience in 2.5 years.
So if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I'll raise my hand.
Go ahead, Dr. Myers.
Okay, so I'm very familiar with Super Eval. I actually like the tool. I think it's very fair and appropriate, and it measures a wide range of knowledge and skills that should be expected of the superintendent. The goal piece, though, is the last section of that, right? And it does, you get rated either ineffective, developing, effective, or highly effective. So the goal, whatever goals that we mutually agree upon get put into that, and that's how it's rated.
Yeah, so I just want to say, I know, because we've used it for the last couple of superintendents, but there was a commissioner who tried to create a subcategory in there.
Oh, okay.
We can talk about this offline.
Okay.
I want you to know, I just want to put it out there that we should not be doing that as a board. That the
okay.
Here,
Okay.
and that's where we fall in, but they try to create a subcategory for that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions relating to the superintendent evaluation or goals? I don't see any other hands. I think that we can probably move on. All right, so yeah, I apologize. I almost skipped this entire category or subtopic, so apologies to all. That brings us to the board budget goals.
And Commissioner Malloy, that was added simply to reflect that it will be part of the plan with the timelines that Commissioner LeBron has stipulated for that.
Fantastic. All right. Is there anything else that we need to talk about in that regard?
Bylaws.
Yes. Okay. So our next subtopic is adding to our board bylaws. So Madam Clerk or Ms. Wade, can you speak to this, please?
So one of the discussions that we were having with Commissioner Malloy was part of the DE report talks about an annual professional development plan. And the thought was to memorialize that by including it in the bylaws so that as other board members come through, there is a memorialization and a legacy created by this board that talks about the importance of professional development, and that incorporated within the bylaws is a stipulation that you create one every year.
I don't see any hands.
I just asked for clarification. Did you say, I'm sorry, Commissioner Malloy.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Did you say the professional development or board self-evaluation?
No, that the board would create a professional development plan each year. And it would include elements like an evaluation, both for the board, the superintendent, and other professional development moving forward.
Yeah, so I just want to say then I would support the professional development plan be codified through the bylaws. Absolutely, that we do that yearly. You know, we have a plan that we move forward with. The self-evaluation, that conversation is another rabbit hole, but essentially we agree to this part to start, but I don't want to be doing a self-evaluation, and I'm just going to put this out there, that it doesn't result in any actual changes for anything or anyone or this board. So I agreed to be open-minded to this self-evaluation tool that we're using. I don't know if it's going to be effective, so I don't want to personally put that piece or identify this tool specifically in the bylaws, but a professional development plan, 100% I support.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Oh, we have a question. Commissioner Powell, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks. How do I want to say this? So far I'm hearing there's a willingness to put this requirement in our bylaws, but when I asked that we include professional development in our standards of conduct, I got huge pushback from one. And so all I can deduce from that is that if it comes from me, it's not a good idea. If it comes from somebody else, it's a great idea. That's all I want to say.
I'm going to respond to that because she's talking about me. And let me just be clear. We created yet another document that we as a board are going to do nothing with. Our bylaws, however, will dictate to us what we need to do. But putting it in a forum when we had 5 meetings that discussed this process, including professional person from the state NISBA office, NISBA, to come in and help guide us around these board retreats and conversations around this. And it was decided that the 7 and 6, we had like 50 recommendations. So we had to narrow it down to create this document. I don't want us to continue to create documents and words that we're not even going to do anything with it. We're not going to do anything with it. So let me just put it out there. Now, the bylaws is a different story. And I do believe that professional development training as a plan should live in the bylaws. That is the way that any board member that comes in doesn't have to agree to this forum. These are the bylaws that were created by the board. And the bylaws require more than 4 people. So, and I'm not gonna go back and forth, so I'm gonna shut my camera.
Oh, I think I see two more hands. I have Commissioner Powell and then Dr. Jallo. Commissioner Powell, did you want to go?
I thought I was second. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So I'm really frustrated about this because anyone could say any document is just another piece of paper, including our bylaws. I'm equally frustrated by this notion that one board member can say, and we're not doing any more back and forth. That's for the board, the committee.
I'm going back and forth with you, but I can, Commissioner Powell, but I just said I won't.
It is my turn to speak. I was recognized. So my point is that it's the committee chair that decides whether there's going to be more back and forth and whether someone's going to be recognized. And the committee chair did recognize me.
I just want to, Dr. Jallow is next.
Yeah, I was going to bring us back on topic here. So in the DE report, it clearly specifies at least 4 topics that should be part and parcel of your professional development. And my second point is, traditionally, when you do a self-evaluation, that data is collected and aggregated and used to design your professional development. So the information that comes out of a self-evaluation will also help you pick topics based on what everybody says is an area of need.
Thank you, Dr. Jallow. Thank you. President White, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Again, returning to the focus of this conversation and actually going back a bit, Dr. Jallow raised the question about how do you know whether something's working or not? And my response and my attempt to provide a specific answer to her question, I said, well, one of the things that we can use are these professional development tools. These are mechanized tools of evaluations. They're very successful. I think I heard Dr. Myers indicate that she especially liked the SuperEval system. So these are credible systems. We've used them. And again, I think this topic is sort of resurfaced once again. We do these professional developments, and what we ought to be doing is making sure that as part of these SuperEval systems, the board and the superintendent, that these mandates that we make of ourselves are evaluated in terms of their data and in terms of our assessment as to whether they are working or not. So Marisol, I was going to send you an email. I was going to copy and Kalia. What I think we ought to do is make sure that every board member has, you don't have to do the SuperEval because I think we all know that, but certainly I would like to see every board member get the eval for board members. We're supposed to be filling them out, right? We're supposed to be doing them, but just so that we could see, not only provide ourselves an evaluation this time around, but also to see if they're in alignment with this stuff that we say we're going to do. And as Dr. Jallow points out, are they, not only will they test our opinion or get our opinion, but do they require that we generate data that suggests that whether this stuff is working or not? And then the other point that I wanted to make, and when you turn the gavel back over to me, to Commissioner Powell's point and to Commissioner LeBron's point, both of them make the point that this stuff is just on paper, right? And an evaluation is just on paper, but Dr. Jallow is saying, let's get some data in there, let's get some opinions. But the other thing that we can and should do, and I'm going to pick up on this when I get the gavel back, is we need to remind ourselves in real time whether we're doing what we say we're going to do. We have bylaws that talk about conduct. We have bylaws that talk about parliamentary rules, stuff on paper. But if you watch this particular broadcast or prior broadcasts, are we following those rules? So I think that to Dr. Jallow's point, we should be revisiting and making sure those 2 tools that we have not only assess our opinions, but also make sure that they require that some data suggests whether things are working or not. And then the other thing is I would encourage my colleagues and myself included, it's not always about what's on paper. Literally, sometimes it's what we do that indicates quite clearly to ourselves and to the public whether we're doing what we say we're going to do.
Thank you, President White. I do see a hand. Commissioner Powell, was that an old?
Yeah, different point. In the context of board evaluation, self-evaluation, I would really like to see us do, whether it's SurveyMonkey or some other mechanism, just among board members, a very quick post-meeting evaluation. Was our time devoted to one of our key goals? Did we live up to our standards of conduct? Did we follow Robert's rules? And most importantly, did we take steps that actually move us forward as a district? Just some very general, you know, fitted on a 3x5 card kind of questions as a way of tracking how, whether the time we spend in committee meetings or special meetings is time well spent, and get feedback on what we can change if it's not.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I see two different hands. Commissioner LeBron was first.
I just want to point out for those who have short-term memories, or for those who are new and were not here, that we did those surveys and the board did nothing with them. Our previous clerk used to send us survey monkeys at the end of every board meeting. She had a hard time getting any board members, or only a handful of board members would respond. She would have to then spend time trying to track board members down to respond to the survey. She would compile that data and send it to the board, and we did nothing with it. So again, I personally do not want to invest in tools that we do nothing with. And that's just really the summary for me.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Commissioner Elliott's hand was next.
Yeah, I think that we do have to be committed to doing whatever we say that we're going to do, because that's the only way that we improve. And Commissioner LeBron is correct. There are people who did not complete those surveys, but it seems to me that there's a lot of conversation about what we didn't do. I guess the question becomes, are we committed to doing what we need to do to ensure that we're working cohesively, that we're working in a consensus manner? And we know that there's sometimes it's going to be a majority vote. But are we working together? You know, can we in some way develop confidence in one another, given that nobody's perfect? And sometimes I tend to think that people think that everybody's going to be perfect. No, everybody comes with a diverse of opinion and flaws. And so if we could just sort of put that to the side and decide that we're going to work as best as we can with one another, and then recommit ourselves to that. So, you know, if we have not done the survey, let's commit to doing it and then follow through on it. If there's some other instruments that we as a board have not followed through on, that's where I think that, you know, there are people on this board who have strengths in one area and they need to improve in the other area. So let's not, you know, get on people because they have some weakness in the area. Let's those of us who have strengths in one area, you know, let's help the ones that don't, you know. So, you know, I think if we can look at working from that way, I think it's going to be very beneficial. You know, no one has all the answers. People drop the ball, but can we be forgiving enough in order to move this district forward with your strengths and then helping those of us who's got weaknesses? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Let's see, we have Commissioner Powell next.
Yeah, in that spirit, okay, let's say doodle poll. Part of the reason we couldn't do anything is if you didn't get 100% participation from a survey, you really didn't have a solid basis on which to determine whether we were doing the right thing or not. So maybe doodle poll isn't the right way to do it. Maybe the chair of the, let me suggest this is what I might do in the next time I chair, is at the close of the meeting, ask those 4 key questions that I asked. Is the time we spent at this meeting was it devoted to our goals? Yes or no? You know, and then just count the votes. Yes, the yes votes and no votes. Did we follow our standards of conduct? Count the yes votes, count the no votes. If we can't get people to do it using SurveyMonkey or some after the meeting goal, then the easy answer is don't close the meeting until you've gotten your evaluation. It's not impossible.
Let's see. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. I would suggest maybe that we defer to Dr. Jallow on this. Dr. Jallow, do you have any type of recommendation off the top of your head? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I didn't expect to get into this part of the conversation, but I do think after each meeting, you need some kind of closing where you're assessing how well the meeting went against some level of standards or some values or code or whatever it is that you're using to determine, you know, like you might want to measure, did the meeting start on time? Did it end on time? Did everybody get a chance to speak? Was there any, did everybody feel comfortable in the meeting? And you can measure these things, ask simple questions, whether it's verbally or another through SurveyMonkey or something of that nature. I do think it would bring value. And if you have an issue around doing that, then maybe you make a commitment to do it for the next couple of meetings. It's not something that you're making a commitment to necessarily for the rest of the year, but you can do it for the next 30 or 60 days and collect that data and see whether there are some key areas where you're very strong and some key areas where you need some support. I do think it's a valuable process, but you have to believe in it, and you have to believe that you're trying to, that you have to be someone who believes in continuous improvement, growth mindset, which is what we usually say in the classroom.
I can relate to this. Thank you so much, Dr. Jallow. Just as a teacher, I know we're always trying to measure whether or not our lessons were successful, and so certainly we'll keep that in mind, and we'll be deferring to you and looking to you for your expertise as we develop that together as a board. And let's see, we've got Commissioner Elliott, you had your hand up.
To Commissioner Powell's point about, 100% participation, we may not be able to get that, but it still should not prevent us from doing an evaluation on those who want to participate, and then working to improve based on those who submit the form. So I would not do an evaluation, whatever the case may be. Hopefully what will happen is, if in fact we are completing those forms, if we are implementing the recommendations from those forms, if it's not, all 7 of us, then still work on improving with what you got. And then after, I believe, experience, or, some time when people who don't trust the process, then perhaps they'll get on. But I would not allow, I would not be in favor of us not doing those evaluations just because some of us don't want to do those evaluations. Because I think there's still some things that we can learn.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Thank you so much. Do we have any other hands? Oh, we've got President White. Go ahead. I keep looking for your hand on the other screen.
Yeah, I like a lot of folks in this room, want to make sure that we end our meetings or have conversations that are productive. I like Commissioner Powell's idea. It was in part in response to what Commissioner LeBron said, which I think was factually accurate. We did struggle, our prior clerk did struggle to get responses, but I think Commissioner Powell's come up with a responsible response to that. What you will get from me, probably tomorrow morning, not tonight, you will get from me probably about 5 or 6 questions that when I chair a meeting, I'm going to be asking at the end of every meeting, right? And I ask that when you get those, they're not going to be like a long survey. I'm literally going to ask those questions. If you all think that I've missed a question, or there's a question there that shouldn't be asked, please let me know between now and Thursday. We have a meeting Thursday. I'm going to try it Thursday. I'm gonna try. And one of the questions is gonna be, you know, did we follow Robert's Rules of Order? Yes or no? And by the way, there's not gonna be any debate about it when I ask these questions, because we're not gonna have the time for that. It's gonna be at the end of the meeting. Just a quick response. And I've got, you know, did we start on time? Did we keep our agenda commitments in terms of time? Did we comply with our code of conduct? And one thing I'm thinking of adding, and you all let me know what you think, not now, but did something that happened in a meeting respond to our action plan? Or did we accomplish something in our goal? Again, not to have a lengthy conversation about it, but I'm gonna send that out. You all let me know what you think. I think we've probably taken this topic, Commissioner Malloy, as far as we can, but I'm gonna try to follow up on that. And I'm gonna send you all my suggestions for how the questions I will ask with your permission and with your editorial comments at the end of Thursday's meeting. Let's see what we can do if we can do it that way. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, President White. I see Commissioner Elliott's hand again.
And hopefully this will be the last question, but as an example, you know, these meetings tend to go long. And so one of the questions may be, how do we make our meetings more efficient? Particularly if we're having them every week, how do we make them more efficient? So that may be one question that we can ask in order to ensure that we are taking care of the business of our community, but also not allow them to go extremely long. So that's just an example of, you know, what some feedback we can get.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Thank you. So let's just move on to our next agenda discussion item. It's something that our superintendent has proposed regarding our meeting structure. We're currently set up with one district business meeting per month, and then with the East EPO having their own meeting on a separate date. And in order to facilitate cooperation between our EPO superintendent and the RCSD superintendent, as well as keep everyone on the same page, it's been proposed that we merge our EPO and district meeting, if I'm understanding that correctly. So Dr. Myers, can you describe this proposal in more detail?
Absolutely. I think it dovetails actually very nicely after what just Vice President Elliott said as far as meetings. I had a conversation with Dr. Nelms about the additional meeting that East has, and he was more than amenable to always have a standing agenda item on our regular board meeting. I think this will help certainly with reducing the number of meetings that we have, and it'll give Dr. Nelms ample time. We'll give him ample time to present what needs to be presented to the Board of Education. It also helps to keep me in the loop, which I think it's important. Hey, Lexi. I think it also will help us streamline more things, because I think sometimes we have, as a cabinet, we have an over-reliance to that additional board meeting, so it's going to keep us tight, and I think it just helps us to be more efficient as a district. So that's my submission. Dr. Nelms, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add, but we did have a good conversation about it, and he was agreeable.
I agree. I think in the spirit of collaboration, it makes a ton of sense, and we'll be aligned and much more efficient for all of us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Nelms. Thank you, Dr. Myers.
Malloy,
got a hand. I'm sorry. Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, so I just want to also point out that we went to that model based on the distinguished educators also recommending that we separate them, so that we had the opportunity to review resolutions that were exclusive for the district, separated from East, and that they were not meshed. So I don't know if that's something you guys had a discussion on, but again, lots of conversations that were had as to why we went that route.
I think
LeBron, thank you so much for providing that history.
I would just add to that history. I think also that was also due to the lack of collaboration between the parties at the time. When I spoke with Dr. Aquino, it was clear that the lack of collaboration with central office and East was causing some division, and both Dr. Leslie Myers-Small and myself are committed to never have that happen again. So I don't think it would be an issue, but whatever the board decides, I'm fine with.
Thank you, Dr. Nelms. President White.
Yeah, I had commented on this earlier at an officers meeting. I think we have a unprecedented opportunity here. Dr. Myers Small and Dr. Nelms know each other. They respect each other. One of the things years ago, for those of you who weren't around, that we talked about when we created the EPO was to create an incubator of success. It was never intended to be apart from the district, a separate entity. Obviously, it's not a charter school, it's not a private school. They are our employees under contract with us. I think we now have a real opportunity to get us to the point where there is no line of demarcation between the district and the EPO. And I think we're seeing that happen already. This is a great example of that. Carlene coming over to, I shouldn't even say coming over to the district side, is another great example of that. I think, I hope Leslie doesn't mind, I think she respects what the staff, our staff, have invested over at East in terms of the curriculum. I think she sees opportunities to create that, maybe replicate some of those practices over there. And by the way, there are practices, and Sean knows this, that are happening in the district that Sean has replicated. And let us not forget, the board passed a resolution that said this was the last contractual term for the EPO. It is very appropriate and very hopeful now that we are in a phase as it is experiencing its last contractual term, that we now have a real partnership where people are respecting what other entities have to bring to the table. I think this, literally, Leslie made a call today and she called Sean, and the recommendation from both our superintendents came like that. So while Dr. Aquino did feel a certain way about it, the board felt a certain way about it, now we have two leaders who believe that that's not necessary. And I personally support their recommendation. So thank you, Dr. Myers and Dr. Nelms, for taking the leadership role in this area.
Thank you, President White. Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, so I just want to say again that was already happening. We already had both our CSD and the East EPO meetings on the same day, and the board business meetings, and that the recommendation wasn't just because I've had lots of meetings with Aquino and I still stay in contact with Aquino. It was not because solely based on the previous superintendent not being as collaborative as other folks. And I know that Dr. Myers is super collaborative, but it was also based on this board's ability to read the resolution separately and have the time to really question both sides. I'm okay with them remerging because the EPO is going to be done, and I don't know what the exact timeline is, so if we have a date on that, that'd be great. But I just want to remind folks, and I know that you just mentioned Colleen Over, but it's my understanding that that is an interim appointment, so I don't know, Dr. Meyer.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I just want to put that out there to the community as well. So it's up to the will of the board, but I just want to make sure that we are spending adequate time looking at resolutions separately and not merging them and blurring lines and not voting and not having an understanding of what we're voting for because they're all in one packet or mixed together.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Now, President White.
Just so that we're clear, and Dr. Myers and Dr. Nelms, we're not talking about, you're hiring employees, and if we are, maybe we need clarity on this. You're having a resolution for people throughout the district, and then Dr. Nelms' people being melded into. They would be a separate set of resolutions, same meeting, but separate. Did you guys give any thought to that? Because I wouldn't want, and I hope this doesn't sound inconsistent with what I said. I very much want, from my perspective, us to have one meeting. But I don't see why we wouldn't continue to still block out. Is that what you guys were thinking, or maybe not?
I think it would.
It would still like it originally was, Van, where we had separate agenda items on the same long night.
Yeah, I think I think what we just need to make sure that we're clear about, I don't think there'll be issues relative to staffing, but if we have if we contract with like a consultant or something like that, to just make sure that that is very clean and there's no there's no over, that it's clean and it observes any threshold limits as far as spending, those types of things.
You guys will work out the details.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I guess I have a question here. I don't see any other hands. Does this require a resolution then on our part to merge these two meetings?
Marisol, what do we need to do? I'm not sure if we're going down to just the one.
We already have a system that's in place that delineates the district's resolutions and East EPO's resolutions, as there are times when during those meetings we have resolutions from the other district.
No, to move to this model.
Of one meeting.
To one meeting. Is there any act that the board needs to take?
I would ask Carl to answer that question.
So can I just chime in?
But in terms of the logistics, I'm sorry, Commissioner LeBron, in terms of the logistics of resolutions melding with one another, we already have something in place to prevent that from happening.
So I just also want to say that we did approve and pass a calendar that we post on our website for the community to also know. So certainly that was done through the board voting on that calendar. So that may need to require.
That is correct, Commissioner LeBron, and that will be, once this conversation is done, we already have what the calendar will look like, and we need to bring that resolution back for an amendment.
Okay. Then that's the answer.
Is there anything else? I don't see any other hands. All right, fantastic. That seems like a great idea. Welcome the collaboration. And see, our final item tonight is just regarding Board of Education travel. Madam Clerk, can you explain this update, please?
So we have put together a tentative schedule of professional development events from the professional development organizations that the board belongs to. We are not sure in what capacity these conferences will be held, whether they will be virtual or in person, but this is something that we start working with different board members to identify who is going to be participating in these and to ensure that we stay within our budgetary constraints for travel. So this is merely an informational item that I ask for board members to review and get back to Francine with any interest that you have on any of these, and we'll stay on top of them and let you know whether they're going to be in person or virtual.
Okay, I see Commissioner Elliott's hand. Go ahead. Oh, I see a lot of hands, sorry. I don't know who was first. So that we have Commissioner Elliott, followed by Mr. Christoph, followed by Commissioner Shepard.
Well, maybe you let Carl go first, because I think there was a question that needed to have been answered. Amy, if that's okay, I will yield my time to the General Counsel.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Christoph.
Thank you, Commissioner. With response or in response to the question concerning what might have to be changed, I agree that the calendar certainly will have to be changed. And if you're going to go to one meeting a month, you currently have a bylaw provision that says you will meet on the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. So you may want to pay attention to that as well if you're going down to the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Christoph. Commissioner Elliott.
You're muted.
Muted.
And I see Commissioner Powell and Commissioner Shepard's hands up. I didn't know if they want to respond specifically to what Carl said. If they do, I'll yield the floor.
Commissioner Shepard?
No, it's about the training.
Okay. So on the calendar, one alternative, and I saw this when I was reading through minutes of meetings and years and years past, even before I was a board member, is one alternative is to keep the calendar the same and the bylaws the same, but if there are no items, if there's nothing to present to the board, then to have that meeting canceled. I do like the idea of one meeting a month combined. Just as Dr. Myers-Small said, it does instill discipline in the administration to get things in by the deadline and take care of the business at one meeting a month. One of the reasons that having two meetings often has worked is when that deadline gets missed, oh, well, we can throw that resolution in with the East EPO, or vice versa. The East will try to attach a resolution to a regular board meeting. And that is a sign of a lack of discipline and prior planning. But an alternative to the bylaws change and a calendar change would be to leave it on, but to take every step humanly possible to ensure that there is no business to be conducted in that second meeting, and so that meeting can be canceled. And that happened fairly frequently at one point in our ancient history, you know, where meetings were canceled due to lack of agenda items.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. So that brings us to either Commissioner Elliott or Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, I'll go. I think Commissioner Powell, even that way, it'll be probably not as efficient as we need to have it. So I would prefer to just drop that meeting and change our bylaws and the calendar back, because you know, to the commissioner, I mean, to the superintendent's point, and to the monitor, I think that you know, we want to try to get as tight as we can, and this is the beginning stages of trying to become as efficient as we can. But my question has to do with the travel. One, I think that we would, because I just don't really envision this year there are going to be a lot of in-person meetings, and particularly not at the levels that we've had them before. But since we're on this topic, and I see Dr. Jallow just sort of left off the screen, but my question is based on what's the criteria for the state monitor to make the decisions of approving travel? So if you don't mind, Commissioner Malloy, I'd like the state monitor, Dr. Jallow, to respond to that if you're okay with that.
Of course, thank you.
So you're probably not going to like my answer, because I would first refer to what your goals are. What are the goals of the district or the goals of the board? And then I would look at your budget. And if you have the money and it's aligned to your goals as a board, shouldn't be a problem. If one of those criteria are not met, we should have a conversation. But you have to have goals. So I'm at a loss absent those goals as well. Like would this match with your professional development goals around improving your knowledge around fiscal, guidance or fiscal responsibility? Oh, well, if this is a good opportunity to learn more about that or be exposed to people who are doing that type of work, well, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense in Hawaii, but it makes sense, right? So we would look at it and see if you have the monies to go and if it's aligned to your goals. That would be my initial response. I can't see anything else other than that.
Thank you, Dr. Jallow.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Elliott, as well. Commissioner Shepard.
So I had a question for Marisol, but I did just want to quickly respond to Dr. Jallow. So I can't recall any of the trainings or conferences that we go to that have never aligned with any of our goals. as board members. So I just want to make that clear. I don't want, I just don't want the community to get confused, right? But the money piece is obviously important. So got you on that. But I did want to just ask Marisol in regards to the calendar that we have right now. I know that sometimes with the conferences, they do have an end date, even though they haven't decided like the location or if it's going to be in person or not. Could you check, or do you know if they have had a registration deadline that's been set for each of the conferences yet that we would know about?
I'm going to ask Francine about that because she developed this list. My thought is that because we're still in a COVID situation, people are in a wait and see pattern.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, we have another hand. Go ahead, President White. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, and I know Marisol would have added this had they been active, but you know, there's a number of other organizations that we pay yearly dues to, including NSBA, and that has a number of subgroups, CUBE, which we all have, or some of us have attended in years past, and like Commissioner Shepard said, with a great degree of benefit, not only to ourselves, but to the district at large. But I would make sure that at some point, those organizations get on there as you.
They are.
Oh, they are? I didn't see them on the sheet.
2 pages. It's on the second page.
Oh, she didn't scroll up to the second page. I'm sorry, I didn't see the second page. All right, good then, I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, President White. And it looks like I don't see any other hands. So I guess that ends the governance portion of our meeting. So I will now hand the gavel back over to our board president. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Just in terms of, I know it's not on the agenda, but I want to add a piece called old business. I referenced it earlier on. I apologize. I intended to share with you earlier the elements of our code of conduct, specifically Appendix A. I'm not going to do that at this particular point in the meeting. I think we, with the exception of one brief moment, I think we did pretty well. I would remind you all, though, that those rules, that code of ethics and Appendix A are located within the board policy number 2160. And they're very detailed with respect to not only the expectations and behavior of board members, but of the penalties that it can accrue if people do not abide by those rules. I didn't create them, obviously, by myself. The board did. And so I would ask my colleagues to read those rules again, and just to give you a heads up, occasionally, periodically, because, you know, sometimes we need to be reminded. I intend on reading them to you at the outset of the meeting. And as I think this is, again, a great example of continuous improvement, in support of that effort to remind ourselves, myself included, by the way, I am going to work real diligently and hard on drafting about 5 questions. I had a colleague, I'll tell you who it is, Dr. Ruth Turner, sent me a text, because, you know, everybody's always texting during these meetings. And she informed me something that I didn't know, which is in Zoom, you can create internal polls. I didn't know that. Thank you, Ruth. And I, again, as I told you, I'm going to send you all my best effort at 5 or so critical questions that we could just literally answer. And I'm going to save time in my meetings, the meetings that I'm chair, at the end of those meetings, to have you all answer those questions. And we will not adjourn the meeting until you answer those quick questions. And there will naturally be what will be the follow-up to that? Because, you know, you're not going to have any discussion. It's going to be yes or no answer. And we can work together collectively, along with Dr. Jallo and our new superintendent, on what would be the follow-up to that. But at the very least, we would know, the data would be, well, we haven't followed our Robert's Rules of Order. We haven't followed our code of conduct. What happens with that? We'll have to figure that out. But at least, to Dr. Jallo's point, there would be the data, you know, our objective, perhaps subjective assessment at the end of every meeting, whether we followed our Robert's Rules of Order, whether we followed our code of ethics. Now, what we do with that is another thing. And perhaps that's where our retreats come in. That's where we, take the blessing and benefit of Dr. Malik Muhammad and all those other folks, and Carl, who can tell us about Robert's Rules of Order. And one of the things that, we're getting full benefit of Dr. Jallo's services, because one of the things she said to me was that Carl, who is an amazing wealth of knowledge, gave us the Robert's Rules of Order. But my bad, what we didn't do in that particular meeting was talk about, okay, are we doing this effectively? And when we don't, what can we do to make sure that we do that? So I think between me reminding myself and others what the rules are occasionally during board meetings, at the end of every meeting, doing that Zoom poll, taking the data from that poll, and then having retreats that address directly whether we're doing that stuff and why we aren't doing that stuff, could make a difference. So thank you. We're all set there. So the next item, is there any questions or comments regarding that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is new business. Commissioner Adams, you had a resolution that you had prepared.
Hey, Commissioner.
Commissioner Adams, I see Vice President Elliott raising her hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't fast enough. But I think that makes sense. That we continue to do it so that it gets ingrained in us, and so that we know what our for lack of a better term, the boundaries, that's the word I'm looking for, the boundaries that we can engage in. And I think that's very important. So I do look forward to the next time that you to do that. I think that's going to be maybe a policy meeting or something, that we could begin this whole process, and that we can self-monitor. I know we got a state monitor, but that we can self-monitor to ensure that we are getting, we are using this time wisely, that we're using this time correctly. Because at the end of the day, we want this to focus in on ensuring that our children, that we are providing the right policies for our children. But if we are getting caught up into some other kinds of behaviors, and as Spectrum News did the other night, they didn't report on, the work that we did, but the tension that was in the room. So I'm looking forward to that. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you, Vice President Elliott. Commissioner Adams?
So I want to take this opportunity to talk about one of the two elephants in the room. The one I'm not going to talk about is COVID-19, but there needs to be continuous talk about that. The other one, elephant in the room, is racism. An SRO in schools is a symptom of racism. And in my opinion, anyone who believes or doesn't admit that organization is a racist organization, they're not prepared to have an honest conversation with me or anybody else in the community. Same thing is RCSD. It's structurally there's racism up in the RCSD, and we have to be able to admit that, or we can't move forward. And so I said that to say I needed to bring that out when we talk about this, because people in the community have been talking about why is the RCSD quiet on this issue. First of all, as a board, we've not been quiet on the issue. This issue has actually been on the table since before I got on the board. It's been on the table. And since I've been on the board, I could say that me and two other commissioners actually have been leading. We've not been dragged into this. We've been leading this issue. So, and I'm not here to try to dog out any officers or any of that, because everybody can mention Moses Robinson. He's national. He's not an SRO anymore. He's a national figure good person. Everybody loves him, but he is the exception to the rule. He is the exception to the rule. So let's be clear about that. And the kids, everybody like to say they support the kids, man, but nobody's asking the kids how we can support you. And so I've asked that question. And as a result of asking that question is why I've submitted this resolution. This is not what we need. And this is like the perfect storm to do something different. There is no way, in light of everything that's going on, that we should be rebuilding. Rebuilding what? Rebuilding back to what we had that was not working. I'm not going to take up the floor with my speech, but I feel I have kids in this district. I've talked to kids that aren't my kids, but I'm like an uncle to them, and they all pretty much support me submitting this resolution. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm bringing this to the floor for review. We've been talking about this, and I just thought it was important that the community know that we've not been disregarding this issue. The board as a whole has been discussing this issue. And like I said, there's some commissioners that have been leading this issue. And with that, it's on board docs. If anybody wants to see it.
Are you asking for a motion for this
Yes.
tonight?
Yes, yes.
A motion.
Seconded.
If I can jump in.
Yes.
The motion is to have it forwarded to the board meeting on Thursday.
No, I'm
That's what
motioning. I'm sorry. Let me be clear. I want a motion for a vote today. There's no point in voting and waiting for city council to dissolve it. We should be taking a stance. We should have been taking a stance on this, but certainly right now we should be taking a stance. So I'm motioning it for today, for right now.
Actually had my hand up before the motion, so I don't know who's running the meeting.
Say that again, Commissioner Shepard.
No, excuse me. Can you all hear me? Again, I would ask that the folks that are manning the technical side of this, please do not mute the host because it prevents me from co-host from talking. Again, as I indicated to Mr. Commissioner Adams, the protocol is to have this matter discussed today, then referred to the full board. That's how we vet all these. Now, having said that, Commissioner LeBron, I'd ask that you raise your hand on the stack. I see Commissioner Shepard has raised her hand. Mr. Shepard?
Yeah, so I first wanted to thank Commissioner Adams for bringing the resolution forward. I have very strong opinions and a stance on SROs in schools. I've said my perspective millions of times, so I don't really need to go into depth today on it. There's a few things, though, in regards to this resolution that I do want to talk about for potential changes that I think need to be made. So the first one is that the very first lines is in regards to the city of Rochester discontinuing the program. And so if that's a part of the resolution, we definitely would have to wait until that's official. The second thing is for paragraph 5, where it talks about the harm related to criminalization of children and youth in the RCSD. It has been well documented and is exacerbated by the presence of Rochester Police Department school resource officers permanently stationed in schools. I have a concern about this paragraph being in the resolution because I would like to know where that is documented at. And for paragraph 7, that talks about the Locust Club suing the PAB. I personally would not want this in the resolution because I don't know what that has to do with the SROs that are in our schools. I do get the argument and the conversations that the community has in regards to the Locust Club Union and the PAB, but I don't know that that has a place in the resolution. I don't personally think it does. The paragraph paragraph 10, where it says the superintendent will cease any further negotiations with the city for services with the Rochester Police Department. I would definitely want that to be removed from the resolution, because the district does have partnership or works with the Rochester Police Department with the career pathways to public safety. So our youth who want to go into the field of being a police officer, we are connected that way. So I would like that paragraph to be removed. I would put that forth. All in all, you know, my background is social work and criminal justice, and so it's always an interesting point for me to be in this stance as a licensed master social worker to support having police officers in schools. And I just want to reiterate that I appreciate Mr. Adams, Commissioner Adams, Commissioner LeBron. I know Commissioner Elliott has also been leading on the removal completely of SRO, so I don't want to miss that point. I would support this, and I do want to go on record by saying I would support it with some of those amendments going to the resolution, only because the city council is going to remove it and we don't have any other option other than to choose something else. I do also want to go on record that I am extremely nervous for some of our buildings. I have never been so stuck in my stance that I would say we can't change and alter and work together and try to find common ground. But I do really want to, I want the community to know that there are many community members who do not want to see police officers removed. Community members who I would entrust my daughter with, who I would entrust them to intervene with anything were to happen, who I would trust them, you know, to build up and know that they build up our students in very positive ways, that are working in our buildings, that are working in the community, that want to see this level of public safety in certain buildings for safety reasons. I just want to be very clear that unfortunately sometimes it may result in a criminalization of an act that may require that. But we also have a bunch of students that we still have to take into account, that we need to have the proper safety levels in place. I never like to have the conversation mixed with social workers, because I don't think it's an either or for me. But I do want to go on record by saying I'm very nervous for the simple fact that I'm not sure, and I know that Dr. Leslie is going to be working on an alternative plan for public safety in regards to this. But I really did want to go on record by saying there are some schools that I am nervous about, simply because I do not believe that we have the personnel right now, and that may change with her plan, or will change with her plan, that will be able to intervene and provide the level of safety that we need them to provide for various barriers. And I won't go into that. We've talked about this multiple times. So I do want to support Commissioner Adams. I think that this resolution is one that we do have to move forward, but I did want to make some of those recommended suggestions in regards to some of the things that I don't believe belong in the resolution for the reasons that I stated.
Okay, I see Commissioner, Mr. Kristoff, then Commissioner LeBron, and then Commissioner Powell.
Thanks, Mr. President. I just have a couple of technical suggestions. It'd be the fourth paragraph from the bottom. It's the first full resolved paragraph. I'd like to suggest just technically that the word approves be substituted for the word aligns. So the board would be approving the elimination of the program. And then rather than by terminating the intermunicipal agreement, I would suggest not entering a new intermunicipal agreement be inserted, because for all intents and purposes, the agreement that is currently in force is over, and the district has paid its obligation, and that agreement is at an end. I wouldn't want us to run afoul of the comptroller saying that, you know, we made a payment concerning a contract that we then canceled. And the only other one would be where it says school resource officers in the second line and any other contracts. Technically, I would suggest school resource officers or any other contracts. And that obviously is subject to Commissioner Shepard's objection, which was made on the merits. I'm just talking simply here, just the technicality of how the motion should read to be effective.
Commissioner LeBron.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to point out that over the last 4 weeks alone, this community has witnessed, and myself and other board members, resolutions being walked up onto the floor, which is a term that they have started using. You know, they weren't doing that 2.5 years ago. And so when you see my frustration around the hypocrisy of following rules and Robert's rules and talking about bylaws and code of conduct, when they bend the rules to adapt to what they believe in at that moment. So I just want to put that piece out on the record. And so for the fact that this resolution should be and could be walked up onto the floor right now and motioned to pass today. I do hear you, Commissioner Shepard, with your feedback. I think that would be, I would support this resolution 100% as written. However, I think it would be up to Mr. Adams, who created the resolution, whether he would want to adapt those changes in there or how he wants to proceed. But let me just say this, that if you're looking for data, there is data that exists out there. And I think that the PAB piece is important primarily because the whole sole purpose of the creation was more accountability around police officers and negative interactions that they're having with our community members. And so the same rules apply when there is a negative incident with a police officer within the school district. We are limited to fully understanding what discipline measures were taken from the city's RPD side with that officer. And having worked in this district, I have personally witnessed the SROs and RPD inappropriately interact with our students and put them in situations that they should not have been in. And one criminal record for a student over a moment of emotions that were overwhelming for them, or a decision out of anger, which I am guilty of almost every board meeting, is one too many for me. So with that said, I do want this board to make the decision today how we're going to move forward. And I think that line is very clear. I do recognize that we have other contracts with RPD, including sports. But again, a lot of those people that attend the sports that are related to the RPD contracts are SROs. So there has to be a safety relook plan at that point as well. And the Pathways to Career program, my kid went through that program. I do not think that there are actual, I don't recall any of her teachers that were there currently still practicing. It could be different now, but when she was there, it was mostly folks who had worked in the field, retired, or worked around the county and not just in the city. So if there is still some connections there, I would definitely like to have that reevaluated and reexamined. But RPD is one small portion of that because there are firefighters and EMT, and that's part of that program. So I support the resolution 100%. I support that it's walked onto the floor for a vote tonight. And I thought I motioned it and that Commissioner Malloy seconded it. So I don't know if that is an official resolution movement, but if not, I will motion it again at this very moment and ask for a second.
We have Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Powell.
I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute. I have two avenues of inquiry that that are running through my head at the same time. One is what Commissioner LeBron just said about whether the motion was recognized or not. And that seems unresolved to me, whether it was recognized, but clearly the intention was to hear for this discussion to unfold. So let me go on to my question or my comments about the resolution proper. I think the world has shifted in a dramatic and kind of an exciting way since we passed our budget that included a scaling back of our SRO contract. Even that was a move that I thought was in the right direction. And when I say I'm excited, you know, I'm looking at the news about Seattle and its autonomous 7 blocks of autonomous district. Real responses nationwide to police violence and abuse that suggests to me that even here in Rochester, we're at a place where we could renegotiate our compact. What I mean by that is not just the conversation about SROs, but the whole compact between institutions like city government and the police department and RCSD, our compact with our constituents and our citizens, that we're all going to take greater ownership for our behavior personally rather than have it enforced fairly or unfairly by the police. So I think that the way that the protests have unfolded suggests that there are more possibilities than there ever were before. The world is changing right before our eyes in a terrific way, because people are standing up saying, we can do things differently. So to this, specifically to this resolution, I'm in favor of it conceptually. I would have preferred the suggestion come from the administration, recognizing that it may be cut from the cities on the city side, never mind our budget. I would like to see that process work its way through first and find out whether in fact City Council intends to approve the budget that the mayor presented them, which does not include SROs, with or without our contract and reimbursement. So all of those things are kind of in play in my head, concerns about whether we as RCSD are ready to completely eliminate, and if the city goes forward, it'll happen anyway, with or without a vote on this resolution. But what I'd like most of all is to honor Commissioner Shepard's ask that some of the language be altered. Language that's in the whereas clauses certainly does no harm because it does not change the substance. And if it allows us to get to 7-0 rather than a 6-1 vote or whatever it might be, I think we should honor that those suggestions. I also think that our legal counsel has offered some valuable advice, and I think that should go into the resolved paragraph. And so, having, I think, as concisely as I can, stated my position, I would ask the chair, Mr. President, if the motion was in order and seconded in order, I would offer to put a motion to table so that the language can be shaped to meet Commissioner Shepard's needs and brought to us on Thursday. I do support this idea. I would like to get a better sense of where City Council is on theirs, but I'm not sure that it would change my mind if they suddenly said, no, we're going to support an SRO contract. If they voted that, I don't know that I would say that I wanted it at this point, because the world has changed. and in what I think is a wonderful way. So, Mr. President, what is your stand on whether that was that motion was in good standing or not?
Well, I think it's kind of academic. If people want to, that is our process. But I don't want to get into my comments, but I hear people saying they want more time, so they don't want to vote on this. But let me just say, I heard you suggest you wanted a motion to table. Can I just suggest, Commissioner Powell, that you not seek a second on that motion, because then we got another motion that we have to deal with, because as you know, motion to table goes directly to a vote. And I also want to say, and you don't have to, we can make it official, you have a motion table, but there are two other people that are.
Yes, certainly don't want to force, I don't want to force an end to the conversation with a non-debatable motion. I thought I was at the bottom of the stack, but are you saying then that you're considering the motion and the second to be a valid motion and second then?
Well, what I heard, and I was trying to avoid talking about specific, what I heard is Commissioner Adams made a motion, it was seconded. And then later on, and then I said, any comments? And then later on, somebody said, well, I want this to be considered right away. It wasn't part of the original motion, but I don't want to argue over academics. If people want to
So can you, as the clerk, record, go on record and say what motion to record it?
Commissioner LeBron, please follow the rules. I see you're next on the stack. I will call you next. So, Commissioner Powell, I appreciate the fact that maybe I haven't answered your question directly, but my recollection was, but in the end, I'm not trying to prevent people from voting if that's what they want to do. I eventually will make my remarks, and they're consistent with what Commissioner Shepard said, what you said. But I want to make sure we get to everybody else first. So I apologize if I haven't specifically answered your question, but I do want to make sure that we listen to everybody. And Commissioner LeBron, you're next.
Yeah, so one, I would like Marisol to state which motion she recorded, because I did not hear a motion originally from Mr. Adams. I heard him bring up the resolution, and I motioned it so that it could be an official motion so that this resolution is up for a vote today. Two, I have not heard from Commissioner Adams whether he agrees with the changes. I am supporting his resolution as written. So that's me. I want to be clear. I don't know where everyone else stands. I think I'm clear on where Commissioner Shepard stands because she was clear with her point. And third, I want to say the City Council held a press conference yesterday, and they will not be reinstating SROs, and they are supporting the mayor's budget as it's written. So I just checked their meeting. They're still having hearing for council. So I'm waiting for them to vote officially. But as of yesterday's press conference, it pertains to the city of Rochester's budget. They are going to be voting yes and passing that budget with the cuts that they made, including SROs.
I see Commissioner Elliott, Vice President Elliott.
Thank you. Let me just say, first of all, I haven't read this. I'm looking at when I received it, and it was 3:13 p.m. today. So I really have not had an opportunity to react to this. And I just, I'll offer some friendly advice here. If there's something that anyone who's putting up a resolution wants support from, reach out personally, so that and then I may have some questions to be able to ask about it. But let me just say, I won't support it tonight because I haven't read it. I haven't had the time to read it. And I'd be willing to look at it for Thursday, but I can't react to anything right now because I really have not had the time to reflect. And everybody knows conceptually I'm there. But in terms of this proposal itself, I just haven't had an opportunity to reflect and to be able to speak intelligently about it. And I would prefer that we have the conversation on Thursday so that I can hear more conversation about it and to be able to make an intelligent decision. Tonight, I'm unable to do that.
I see Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Adams?
You're muted. You're muted still. Still muted. Still muted.
Okay, so I'm good with whoever's voting no. I'm good with that. Let's just get this on. And there's outside of the legal stuff that Carl was talking about. There's not a whole lot that I really want to change about this, especially about the Locust Club and the police accountability. That's one of the main reasons that this thing is coming out here is their desire not to be held accountable with my kids. Is that how sick is that? Don't want to be held accountable. When the community came out, it was 75%. I don't care if it was only 5 people voted. And that was 75% of the community came out and said that we want this accountability board. And they chose to combat that and say, we don't want to be held accountable. I don't want them to be accountable for my kids in here. So, I mean, this might be kind of symbolic in itself, because in the end, City Hall is going to make the decision. It don't matter what we say. So I'm fine with people just saying no, and I could be the only one. But I'm putting it out there, and I'm good with people just letting the community know where they at. I am good with that.
Commissioner Shepard?
I just want to be clear that the SROs that we have in our schools, we do have guidelines around how they act, what they get evaluated on. Now, I know that there's discrepancy on if this district has been following those things, but that's the reason why the Locust Club. But I'm okay. I mean, if people don't want to amend a resolution, I'm okay with that too. I've been very clear where I stand from the beginning, so I'm fine to vote however, but I was trying to offer up friendly amendments just in regards to what I thought addressed SROs in the RCSD, and I'm cool either way.
I see Commissioner Vice President Elliott.
Yeah, then in this case, I'll have to vote no if we're offering, if Commissioner Adams, you want the vote tonight, because as I've said, I haven't had an opportunity to read it. I only received it at, after 3 o'clock today. So I have not been able to, as I said, read it. So I don't have a problem with voting no, and not because I'm against it. The community knows where I stand on it, but I haven't had the time to reflect, and I would want more time to study it, to ask questions about it, and to move it to Thursday so that I can speak intelligent about it. I certainly don't want SROs in our building. Now, I'm clear about that. However, with this particular resolution, I have not had the time to read it. And if you're asking me to vote on tonight, my vote will be no because of that. Thank you.
So I want to offer up my comments, but to save time, a bit of time, I see Commissioner Powell. Go ahead.
No, I put it up deliberately, waiting until you had said your piece, and then I'm going to offer a motion to table.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. To save some time, there's not a thing that Commissioner Shepard said that I disagree with, and in fact, I support some of. I'm describing them as concerns, but some of her observations, probably a better way to describe it. So, she said a lot, and she and I had not spoken, but I agreed with everything that every one of her observations. I would add some other stuff. First of all, I want to be clear for the record, as we sometimes say here, and so the facts are clear. Mayor Warren, before George Floyd ever met that faithful police officer, Mayor Warren made it very clear to this community that she was either going to have 12 SROs or none. This wasn't a matter of trying to protect citizens or students. Before George Floyd died, Mayor Warren made it clear to our prior superintendent, I think even to our current superintendent, but I'm not exactly sure if Leslie was here. But I do know this debate about whether we were going to have SROs in school was not about student safety or the security of our citizens with police officers being present. We, as a board, I think it was a majority vote or a unanimous vote, agreed with our prior superintendent that we would reduce the number of SROs in our schools to 7, and we would eliminate that by 5. A good transition program for an important issue like school safety. You just don't want to, this is just my singular opinion, you don't just want to just shift gears without giving people like the administration a chance to figure out how you're going to hire additional SROs. So we, as a board, I remind you, I think everybody agreed, it was a sensible, reasonable approach, not removing all the officers from the schools, but 5 of them, and hiring more SROs. We all voted in favor of that. That was a reasonable approach. Again, let me repeat, we're dealing with student safety. No matter what you think about SROs, I think we all agreed that the gradual, reasonable, responsible approach was to reduce it. Now, we hadn't said we were going to eliminate them altogether, but everybody pretty much agreed to that. And the response we got from City Hall and the mayor, let's just be clear about this. I'm not trying to create any theater. I'm talking facts. The fact was, she said, you have to have 12 or nothing. It never was a question of, I don't think these kids are going to be safe. She wanted 12 or nothing. Now, she may have had her reasons behind it, but one of those reasons was not George Floyd and the safety of citizens. That's the first thing that I want to be clear about. Second observation I want to make is we have had many SROs in our schools. Commissioner Adams is correct. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Moses Robinson. He's no longer an SRO. I think everybody who knows him knows that. He is, as Commissioner Adams has said, become somewhat of a respected national ambassador for police relations. And there's a reason behind that, because for many years, as you all know, and there's many of them, he served admirably and respectfully in the role of an SRO. He came before us to tell us, that person that we respect, that SROs is a good program. So Commissioner Adams is correct. He's no longer an SRO, but he did come before us, person who many of us would listen to, person who many of us would and have had our kids walk with him, said SROs is a good program. Now, everybody doesn't have to buy that, but the reality is he is a legitimate voice that some of us might listen to on the viability and the appropriateness of having SROs in schools. And let me just say, everybody has their own experiences with cops and police officers. I know very good police officers, and I know very bad police officers. I know police officers who have saved lives, and I know police officers who have destroyed lives. I know police officers that have helped people, and I know police officers who really hurt people in significant, dramatic, life-changing ways. But I also know police officers who've saved people's lives in dramatic and significant ways. And so I choose not to conclude, and I'm not saying anybody here has taken this position, just because I know one bad cop, and I probably know as many bad cops as most folks do professionally. And I know what they can be capable of. But I also know, like many of you all know, good cops and what they can be capable of. So I choose not in one decision, in one night, to say, okay, throw out the baby, and these are my words, not anybody, throw out the baby with the bathwater. Because I believe that there might be some good folks in that bathwater that can help our children. Commissioner Shepard says in her later points, there are schools that certainly without a transition, our children might be in harm's way. Not that the SSOs can't do a good job and aren't doing a good job, but without any transition people, that's just, I just worry. I forgot the word that Commissioner Shepard used. I use the word, I worry that in some schools, not all of our schools, but in some schools, to not have a transition plan, which is what we were talking about, it's just not the way to go here. The other thing that I think a number of people said, including Commissioner Shepard, Commissioner Powell, is that we often talk about, this is our superintendent, we're going to listen to them, and we're going to see what the recommendations are. This is as significant of a decision that a central office team can be asked to make. it doesn't get, and the board has treated it very seriously. Commissioner Adams and others are very serious about this, and I'm not suggesting that they're not. But we have not had our superintendent, what she used to hold up 8 weeks, 8 days or something like that. I don't know how many fingers she has left to count the number of days she's been working. But we have not heard from her on this resolution. Vice President Elliott says she's just taken a look at it. I know Commissioner Adams worked very diligently on this. I think it's extremely well worded, very comprehensive, but we have not heard from our superintendent. And we're all talking about it's important to listen to our superintendent. We even have that as part of the proposed communication guidelines. And we realize that maybe we ought to do a better job in that regard. We have a lot of serious things on our plates, and this has got to be one of the most important ones. How do we keep our children safe? In the past, we've used SROs with a combination of SSO. Now we're purporting to change all that. And we won't, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, and we won't take the time to let our superintendent, and she hasn't said this to me, this is just my own thoughts, to chime in on what she thinks the transition should be. I had somebody call me today and say they have to hire, I don't know if this number is correct, 22 SSOs if what goes down, which we all expect to go down, 20 SSOs. And the person said to me, you know, certification, training, it's a bear. I don't even know how we're going to do this. So we haven't, and I'm sure Leslie could probably try to chime in, but I wouldn't even dare ask her to. We wanted her to get a recommendation, and that recommendation would have to include an assessment of training and certification and concerns about student safety and the transition. We haven't had any of that discussion. So for me, it's not a question of, I did say we have a process, but this is clearly an instance where we would want to comply with our process. Let us vet this idea. Now, I think that one of the reasons why people, not anybody in this virtual room, but maybe people outside, want us to make a decision. They want people to make a decision on the spot before City Hall has made the decision. Maybe that's what some of these folks want. But we have a responsibility not to look at what City Hall's doing, but to make sure that our decisions are right and sound and reasonable and based on what has happened. You know, Commissioner LeBron said, well, you know, I saw them at a press conference. They all say they're going to vote. A press conference is not a vote. We don't know, they may have done it by now, it's 8:01, but we don't know what they're going to do. And most importantly, we don't know what our superintendent is going to do in response to that and how she might plan for that. So I do think it is appropriate to wait, not because I'm afraid of what people might say or I don't want to be on the record. I read the web pages and the social pages. I see what people are saying. That is never going to drive my decision for what I do for our children, right? But I think this is the kind of decision that we should take our time and that we should hear from our superintendent and we should hear from each other. And then if it's Thursday, so be it, it's Thursday. But again, to Commissioner Shepard's point, even if we were, and to Commissioner Adams' point, even if we were to vote on Thursday, and I won't get into the detail because I think Commissioner Shepard said it best, and some other commissioners, there's some stuff in that resolution that I do not believe belongs in there. But I respect Commissioner Adams when he says he wants to leave it in there. You know, so that's where I'm at. I do see some more hands have been raised. Commissioner LeBron?
Yeah, so one, I reject your whole conversation and speech here about one or two, you know, good cops, bad cops. The whole damn system needs to be completely eliminated, and we need to, this is the time to have a whole restart. But let me just say, I had a conversation today with a city council person. I just needed to understand how many police officers are actually on the force. Because when you talk about good cops versus bad cops, I can only name 5 people in the entire RPD that are good cops, Moses Robinson being one of them. There are 400 RPD officers, 5 I can name in my hand, and not just me, this community can name those same officers. One of them passed away. One of them accidentally shot himself and passed away. May he rest in peace. But not to say, man, this argument, it's mind-blowing to me that the data that is historically there with police officers in schools, police officers in Black and brown communities, that this is your argument. I want this community to be very clear. This has been a fight, like Ricardo said, before he and I got on this board. I will say Mary Adams and a few other commissioners before her were having these conversations. These same repetitive conversations. I've been having these conversations for the last 2.5 years. Ricardo's been having this for a number of years. He was having this conversation when Mary was on the board. So let me be very clear. I've been very clear and consistent about removals of SRO. I don't need city council to do the work for me to know that this is not the best practice for our Black and brown children in this district. I don't care who gets upset about me making that statement. That's not what I'm elected to do. I'm elected to do what's best in the best interest of our children. And we happen to be an urban school district where we are predominantly Black and brown. So let me put that out there before anybody comes and talks about the less than 10% white students that we have in this district. We are predominantly Black and brown, and we should be doing what's best for our Black and brown students and this community. So some of you, and I'm gonna exclude Commissioner Shepherd because that's my girl, but she has been consistent on why, from her perspective, she has the views that she has. But some of you wanna vote on Thursday because you want City Council to have done the hard work of removing SROs, and they are going to do it. But we should have been done this. You guys, to make the argument that this is something we need time, we've had time. We've had multiple conversations around SROs. For you to make it seem like it was a compromise we all agreed to, no, it was the only option you gave us to remove 5. And if I could take removing 5, then yes, I would support removing 5 and then push next year to remove another 5 or the remaining 7. Because you guys as a board majority didn't give me that option to have a full removal until now. So I'm waiting for them to take that vote, and I will be celebrating that SROs will be removed from the Rochester City School District. Mr. Adams, I will be taking your lead on how you want to proceed, whether you want to have the vote tonight or not. I'm going to take your lead on that.
Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Adams.
Let me unmute. So I just got to respond to something that was said. Let me tell you in reference to something was said about with the SROs going, look at the training that the SSO. Let me tell you something. The SSOs need less training than the SROs. They put up with more. They deal firsthand with our students. And they live, and we deal with it another day. Some of the stuff that I've witnessed the SSOs putting up with, they would have been locked up with the SROs. There's no question about it. And I ain't talking about something that SSO told me. I'm talking about something that I went there and witnessed. Because I spent a lot of, just a little bit of time, I've spent a lot of time in the schools. I spent a lot of time, and I've seen how some of these SSOs, I don't know if they've been trained, but they have the tolerance for these kids, man. They put up with some stuff. So I don't, and the SROs need more of that. The police force definitely need more of that. So I just had to put that. Now, I got to say this here, first of all. I got to really say this here. I definitely want to go with the legal. I'm taking the legal's advice. That's the only thing I can just jump off the hook with. Now, I'm going to be good with her tabling it, but I ain't going to be supporting any other changes until I take a look. I got to go to work tonight, and I have all night to look at that. And I'll think about what other changes I might want to go with. I'm going to take into consideration what Natalie said, just because it's Natalie. I honor her so much. And there's a couple of things we don't agree with, but I still honor her. So I'm going to go with us making the vote on Thursday. And I also honor Cynthia's reasoning is because she didn't read it, basically. That was a good reason. And that was a legitimate reason, an honest reason. So I'm going to go with that. And I would hate her to have to vote no on something she's really been a strong advocate with me on. So I'm going to go with not making the vote until Thursday. But I'm not supporting any changes right now except for Carl's suggestion. But I am going to look at yours, Natalie.
Okay, any other comments? I see Commissioner Shepherd raising her hand. And then
Yeah, you know, I just want to back up what Mr. Adams said, or sorry, Commissioner Adams said, that I actually appreciate that, and I know not to be optimistic about what will come back, but the least that I could ask is that you look at it, because before you got on the board, I've been trying to find compromises, but when you got on the board, you have really led what is going to get us to a vote. And even though I've been very strong on my stance, because you brought this forward, I really do want to be able to cross that bridge comfortably. I'll say it like that, comfortably. So I appreciate that you at the very least are just going to look at, and I will send that over to you so you can take a look. And I just want the community to know that there won't be any hard feelings, whichever way Mr. Adams goes, because we've had multiple conversations on and off this screen about this particular subject. And so I just want to appreciate and honor you on the record for at least taking a look at that.
Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. You know, I've been really excited to hear how the dialogue has evolved. When Commissioner Adams said something about have the vote, even if I'm the only one that votes for it, I was actually alarmed, because what I've been hearing is that there's fundamental agreement in favor of it, but for some language changes that we haven't seen. We heard from Carl, but we haven't seen, and Natalie's philosophical standpoint. And so here's the thing. I was so pleased, Commissioner Adams, with what you just said about being willing to wait, and the reasons you gave, especially towards Commissioner Shepard. That is a spirit of cooperation and collegiality, and I would take it a step further and reinforce what you said about giving due consideration to what Commissioner Shepard has offered. Whether you change it or not, who's to say whether it would change your mind? Most of them were in the whereases, which simply explains the resolution. It doesn't have the effect of law, if you will. And because if in fact City Council votes as we all think they're going to vote, and then perhaps Commissioner Shepard would be willing to make this a 7-0 vote, you know, and it would be one of the most significant acts of board unity that we've been able to exhibit in a very, very long time over a really, really important topic. So with that said, I would like at this point to move the table.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah.
Will you do that?
Is still somebody else, Jack? I'm sorry.
No, it's me. I wanted to add to Commissioner Adams that what would help me, and you can reject this or not. I believe the issue of finding 22 SROs is extremely high hurdle to climb. There is less than a month, 2.5 months to do that. I'm familiar with what it takes to get an officer certified in New York State and licensed and trained. So I don't want to debate whether that is true or not. I think that is a significant hurdle. So what I would add to this resolution, because I don't think we're going to be able to get 22 SROs trained and on board on time. What I would add to this is language about really shifting the paradigm and saying we should be hiring, by way of example, someone suggested this to me earlier on when I was having this conversation, we should be directing the superintendent, and give her some chance to chime in on this, our own pathways to peace workers, something like that, because first of all, I don't think we can hire 22 SSOs. The other thing is even if we could, should we not be thinking about restorative practices, intervention, and preventative techniques rather than interdiction, which is oftentimes, not all the times, which is oftentimes what our SSOs do, even though they're not cops. So what I would respectfully suggest that you add, which would make me more inclined to vote for it is, okay, if it's not the SSOs, certainly not gonna be the SROs, and if it's not 22 SSOs, I don't know how much money that represents, because before we were just talking about hiring 7, now we're talking about 22 or something like that. Why 22? Why not 10 and 10, intervention workers to do some of the stuff that we all appreciate? So I would ask that you consider that, but I would still say, because my argument, some people may not think it's legitimate, we should still look to our superintendent, and I appreciate you saying, okay, we'll wait until Thursday, not just to table it, but maybe she can explore this idea, because I do think we are not going to be able to hire 22 SSOs, get them trained and certified. And even if we could, is that even the direction that we want to go in with that money? So, Commissioner Powell, I don't see anybody's name on the stack. I think you were trying to make a motion, and
Unless someone else would like to move to table, I will make that motion now. And when it does come up for a table date certain, being Thursday, and when it does come back, I'd like to see it with Carl's language in that first resolved. You're muted. Van, you're still muted.
sorry, something was going on with my computer. Is there a second to that motion to table?
I second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. A motion to table, as I indicated earlier, goes directly to a vote. We're going to do a roll call vote. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that with the screen. I'll just do it alphabetically because my screen isn't complete. Commissioner Adams?
I'm sorry, what are we voting on exactly?
There's a motion to table Commissioner Adams' resolution to vote for it on Thursday. That means, and a motion to table, it means you don't vote, you go, the resolution would be literally put on the table until next Thursday, at which time we would take it up and vote on it at that time. Perhaps this Thursday. Perhaps with changes, perhaps with no changes. Are we straight, Commissioner Malloy?
Yes,
just a technical question. This is just about the table. I was thinking that Commissioner Adams couldn't make a second to his own motion, but this is the table, so I'm good.
Yeah, that's right. It's a separate motion.
Right.
Commissioner Malloy, are you with us on this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to do this alphabetically. I'll begin with Commissioner Adams. What's your vote?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBron? Commissioner LeBron?
I support you, Mr. Adams.
Okay, take that as a yes. Commissioner Malloy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Powell, I should have done. Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Madam Clerk, it appears that the ayes have it.
You didn't ask me?
You did not ask Vice President Elliott.
Yeah, my alphabet is not that good.
We got to see you back to the Rochester City School District.
Vice President Elliott, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Okay, seems that the ayes have it. Thank you, Commissioner Adams, and we look forward to hearing from you again on Thursday. Next item on the agenda is executive session. We need to go into executive session to get advice from legal counsel and to discuss matters relating to the particular terms and conditions of an employee. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Is there a second, Commissioner Malloy? All those in favor of going to executive session indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I assume the ayes have it, Madam
Aye.
Clerk. So
The ayes have it.
we will go into executive session. Ladies and gentlemen watching this particular board meeting, understand that it's not likely that we will have anything to vote out of executive session. So this is the last time you'll see us for tonight. But as you've heard, we are going to be returning into a board meeting this Thursday. What is it, 5:30 or 6?
6:30.
6:30. We'll see you at 6:30. Good night, everybody. Be safe.